Hi and welcome back. In this video we're just going to look at some examples of the compressor being used on the kick, snare, toms and the full kit. And I'm going to go on the assumption that you've already watched the previous video or the previous two videos, but the last one in particular where we looked at the controls of the compressor and how they work. Because really, in that video, we more or less covered everything you need to know about compression. Because once you know how to use the threshold, ratio, attack and release, it's really a case of practice. Just like with any musical instrument. You just try different music sound sources and get to know how they work together. And so long as you understand really what's going on, then you should be able to manage compression on most sounds. So we already looked at compressing a snare in the previous video when I was demonstrating the attack and release, and more or less that's where you'll probably spend most of your time, is experimenting with these two controls. So you can see with the fast attack time, just to recap, we're squashing the attack there, we're catching all of it, and then with a fast release time, we're only allowing 6.31 milliseconds through, and then the compressor's being turned off. So we're squashing that and then bringing all the level of all of this up. So really, from then on, it's just a case of finding at what stage you want that compression to stop. And you'll notice when we get around here, it starts to sound a little bit like those 80s gated snare sounds like people like Phil Collins used to use, where it's almost like having a reverb plug-in with a long pre-delay setting. So it's like that reflection back from the walls in a larger space. So the snare is struck, then you get a bit of an echo off the walls. So it creates that nice reverby sound. Now, of course, that totally depends on your recording and what sort of space it was recorded in. So some snare sounds won't have quite that same effect, but usually they'll have some kind of decay where the sound is at least reverberating around inside the snare drum itself, and usually there will be some kind of room sound as well. And of course, if you actually have an overhead recording or a recording where there's more of that room sound, then having a longer release time will allow you to bring that up more. But also in that case, if you do have a recording like that, then they may not have quite as loud an attack time because the mic won't be as close to the snare. So you might just be able to turn them up and still get the same effect. And as we mentioned in the last video, the attack allows you to find that trade-off between how much of that initial peak you want to allow through and how natural you want it to sound, but how much you want to allow it to clip up there and therefore have to turn down the gain maybe. So the more of that attack you let through, then often the louder it will get on here and the less control you have over the volume. So as we've already seen this, I'm not going to go any further on that, but really it's a trade-off as to how much control you want and how much of the natural sound you want to hear. Now with the kick drum, it's actually fairly similar because if you look at the envelope here, there's a lot of similarities. It has a very fast attack, it's a loud sound, quick decay, but you'll notice there's not quite as much in that release phase. It doesn't have quite so much of a reverby sound, but if we just solo that and play that on its own, you can still hear that we can actually bring out some of that sound more. And certainly as we squash the start more, we're taking away some of the attack of the sound, making it sound a lot softer. Giving it, again, much of that 80s reverb sound. But if we turn the attack up, you'll notice that it gets clickier and brighter. So we're actually allowing more of that sound of the beater hitting the skin. And depending on the drum sound, you can see this is called bright room plastic. So that indicates that that's why we're getting a lot of that room sound in the recording. But also the plastic is probably why it's got quite a clicky, bright sound to it. Some kick drums won't necessarily be so bright. But really in the case where maybe if the kick's not cutting through that much, then you might want to try a longer attack time just to allow more of that attack through so that you get that brighter sound. And just like with the snare, a longer release time allows more of the emphasis to be on the attack at the start, less of the emphasis on that release phase where the room sound is. You can see around here, that really sounds like you've just stuck it through a reverb. And like I said, maybe if the actual drum sound you were using didn't have such a bright room sound, then it wouldn't quite be so noticeable. But like I said, you can see that all we've done is change these two settings really and vary the amount that we're compressing by a little or boosting the gain afterwards. And really it's just a case of playing with those controls until you find something that you're happy with. So it is actually highly subjective. It's not quite as surgical as EQ, where you can rely on there being certain frequencies where things have a certain effect. With compression, it's very, very subjective. You really have to just, first of all, know what the controls are doing, and then once you do, play around with them until you find what you're happy with. Now with toms, there's one further thing to be aware of, and that is that toms are a bit of a longer sound. Now you can almost see it in the waveform here. The peak is maybe not quite so extreme, and the actual waveform is a bit longer. Now if I just play that, you can hear that very much so in the sound. They've got a long decay to them. The toms have a much more musical sound. You can hear pitch with toms. Now sticking with the lower one, that's got quite a long decay on it. And what that means is you have to be a little bit careful with the attack and release settings on a compressor, because very fast settings can sometimes cause a distortion. Now the reason for that is because with the longer sound, you need to be able to keep the compressor open, if you like, for a longer amount of time. Otherwise, the compressor will be trying to come on and off very quickly, and that will create a distorting effect. If I trigger another clip here, now you can actually hear it quite clearly there. We're compressing by quite a lot, and it's actually sounding really not very nice at all. It's distorting quite a lot. That's really down to these settings here. You can hear as I've turned that release up, it's got a lot better. But the same goes for the attack. Now, just as with the kick and the snare, it's a trade-off. Higher attack settings allow more of the attack through, but the volume also gets louder because we're allowing more of that level to come through. Now that's where a limiter can be useful, because a limiter will allow you to catch those peaks. Even when it's just clipping a little bit here, the limiter will just much more aggressively catch those peaks. Some compressors will have a limiter built into it that you can turn on or off. In Ableton, we have a separate limiter. If we move along to trying compression on the whole kit, I'll go back to this clip here. When you're compressing the whole kit, the emphasis is in a different place, and that is more on trying to make the whole thing gel together. And that's really what you might use compression on a full kit for. Now you might actually still have compression individually on these sounds, and then have another compressor that goes over the whole kit. And a thing to bear in mind when you're compressing the whole kit is that when one sound comes in, then it can kind of swamp everything else. So if you actually listen to what's going on here, I've got quite extreme settings here, but listen to the hi-hat and what's going on there. If I solo it on its own, you can hear it quite clearly. But when I unsolo it, you can only really hear the hi-hat when the kick or snare aren't triggering, because when they trigger, they're so loud that they tend to swamp it. But that's actually kind of what creates that gelling effect. It makes it sound like it's all working together. And again, it's a case of really finding the trade-off with the attack and release, because if you're trying to have all the sounds going at once, then obviously you'll need to find a balance where the longer sounds and the shorter sounds both get equal representation. So for example, going back to a tom groove, that's a bit slower. Now obviously, because we've got a tom in the sound, then we need to be aware that it might need the longer settings. But again, like I said, it's just a case of finding that trade-off, the balance between each sound and the different attack or release settings that they will need. And also it might be a case of just reducing the ratio and so you're not compressing quite so hard. Okay, thanks for watching.